Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Robbie Lockie, and this is Plant-Based News. Welcome to our usual viewers, and a special welcome to all those who've joined us after the exclusive screening of the world premiere of Land of Ahimsa, directed by Ahimsa Ramsey. I'm sure that you will agree, if you watch this film, that it was powerful and held a lot of very important messages. And of course, it goes without saying, if you enjoyed this film, please don't forget to share it with your friends and family, share it on WhatsApp, email it. Take it to a friend's house, sit and watch it with them. It's a really important and powerful film with lots of fantastic and powerful messages, as I said. So today we are joined by the film's producer and protagonist Dolly V.S. Ayuja and executive producer Dr. Salesh Rao and the esteemed Dr. Rupa Shah. Dolly and Sayesh and Dr. Salesh and Dr. Rupa, thank you so much for joining us. Let's bring you in. Got a bit tongue twisted there.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So, congratulations on such an important film, and thank you all for joining us on this Q&A. It's really, really great to sit down with you all. Dolly, first to you. How does it feel now that the film is out in the public?
I am so happy. I'm so grateful. We toured all of India with Dr. Salesh Rao and his son and Bareen, and it's just thrilling. It's thrilling. Today is the day that Plant-Based News has premiered it, and I'm so happy all this hard work has come out and my message. Thank you so much.
So, first of all, I obviously would like to understand a little bit before we get into the film. How did the idea for the film come about, Dolly? Tell us a little bit about the history of its beginning.
Yes, so I was invited to speak at the World Vegan Conference in New Delhi, India. And I started a YouTube channel back then, recipes and interviewing some doctors and some people in my journey. And I told my husband that, when I go to India for this conference, I'd love to interview some activists and doctors and for my small YouTube channel. And then I must have slept on it for a few days. And, I was like, why don't we make a documentary? If we're going to be interviewing all these people in India, why not make a vegan documentary talking about my journey, talking about who I've met, and to tell the truth and to reach out to my own Indian people. I was raised in America, born in India, but, dairy's always been close to my heart. And I was thinking, India is the land of Ahimsa. India, we actually call the cow our mother, Gau Mata. So I asked my husband, let's do a documentary. He called up his childhood friend, Mr. Ahimsa Ramsey, and that's how all this got started.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit about why you believe that it's important to have a culturally relevant event, a culturally relevant film, vegan film like this.
It's very important because, Indians predominantly are vegetarian. Dairy, most people in India think that there's no violence in dairy. And because we don't see what's behind this white glory. We get this milk at our house in a pretty package or we buy it, and we really don't know what's going behind this. And people just can't believe that the baby's not getting milk. They're being separated. How could this be in India? Everyone thinks that dairy is holy and it's okay to take. Lord Krishna had it. But we really have to understand it has become so commercial. And this is not aligning with our values, as our Indian culture. So the best thing is to educate the world and let them know that we need to move on. We need to evolve to plant-based milk products so we can live in a ahimsic world.
Thank you, Dolly. Over to you, Dr. Salesh. Talk us through a little bit about India's history and the relationship between humans and animals, because there's a very special relationship, isn't there, between humans and animals in India?
Yeah, ahimsa is pretty much part of our culture. I grew up with that concept. My parents instilled that in us, but we consume dairy, and the assumption was that dairy was being done in a very ahimsic way, and I also wanted to believe that that's the way it is done in India. Um, so until 2008, I used to consume dairy, and then I went to India and I saw what was happening in the forests of Rajasthan, and I immediately realized that I had been fooled. You know, that it's that it you technically cannot implement ahimsa dairy on the scale that we need at the current levels of consumption. And so I realized that if we wanted the calves to drink half the milk and then take the rest for human consumption, if we wanted all the calves to live out their lives, then for the same amount of milk, you would need about 16 times as many cows, okay, as what you do with a factory farmed version of milk. And I knew immediately that there is no room on the planet for doing ahimsa dairy at the levels at which we consume it. And so when I made that calculation, I immediately went vegan. Okay, because that to me that was natural with my alignment with is aligned with what I wanted to be. Yeah, I didn't want to hurt animals for any reason whatsoever. Yeah, that has been there since childhood for me. Uh, so we, we used to always take ants out when they come into the home and things like that, right? So we were always mindful of other beings and other life around us. And
It's
that's
a
culture.
it's a it's a really powerful cultural message and a beautiful
Mm.
one. I'm just interested with regards Ahimsa's teaching of nonviolence to all living beings, and as you said, India has traditionally followed this philosophy, but have things changed over the years? Have people become more disconnected from the reality of how animals suffer? Do you feel like the sort of principles of Ahimsa, India has moved a lot further away from them than originally was sort of when these philosophies were first created? Do you think that through sort of conversations like this film, we can find a way back to a more ahimsic way of living?
Absolutely. I'm convinced of that. This is why we supported Dolly's work. And I mean, I think it's one of the most important documentaries that I've been involved in because of that. Because India is in a unique position to lead the world out of the climate heating civilization into a climate healing civilization. Because India consumes a lot of dairy. So India's dairy consumption is above average compared to the world consumption. And India's consumption of meat is way below average. Okay, so clearly that ahimsa idea is still there in India, it's still latent in India. So there is a lot more dairy consumption than meat consumption. India has become a huge exporter of the meat. So the exploitation is going on, and yet we are being lulled into thinking that animals are not being hurt. Okay, I was
Right.
lulled into thinking that way. And when I realized it, I immediately had to come into alignment with who I am, and therefore quit dairy. And I think that will be the case for a lot of Indians, in the same position that I was in. So India can then lead the world out of the current mess that we are in. And because
Right.
someone has to start, right? Someone has to take the lead, saying we are
Hmm.
done with that old way of living. It's happening all over the West, it's happening all over the world. But because of this statistic, I knew that dairy is high and meat is low in India. I thought that India should be the place where the leadership comes. Spiritual leadership should come.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Salesh. Over to you, Dr. Rupa. I wanted to ask the question regarding the amount of dairy that's consumed in India. It's a fundamental, integrative part of much of Indian cuisine. What is the effect of the volume of dairy consumption on the Indian population? Or do we see much higher incidences of chronic disease in India in comparison to other parts of the world?
Yes, certainly. The vegetarians are suffering from the same disease as those who are non vegetarians. That's where the question mark comes. Because, we proudly said, I'm a vegetarian. Like I said, that for many years, I was vegetarian by birth. And then So many years I just thought it was superior, ahimsa way of living, till I came to know the reality of the dairy industry. And then I went vegan. But in India, in the Indian subconscious mind, dairy is very deep into our consciousness. So even if there is awakening that maybe dairy is linked with some diseases like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, obesity, the attachment to dairy is very difficult, to give up. We come from a country where there was earlier less dairy available. Now we have so much that we are that maybe probably top two countries in the world in dairy production. That is our attachment to dairy products. And the dairy consumption is associated with too many different health conditions. And now we also have not the deshi cow, the original variety of cow that we were using for dairy consumption. Now we have all Jersey cow because they give far more, quantity of milk than our Indian variety. So it is highly commercial. There is antibiotics, pesticides, there's injury, the quality of food is very substandard, the hygiene is not there, and it's completely commercialized. So now this is the problem. There are so many people who have heard, maybe from A, give up dairy, B says give up dairy, C, maybe a spiritual master says give up dairy, and yet it's not easy to give up dairy, because right from our temples where the prasad is, our morning begins with tea, our breakfast, our lunch. Every restaurant, there are 90% of the dishes have some dairy product in it. Though it's like
Mm.
written pure vegetarian restaurant, it's not pure vegetarian. It has lots of dairy in it. So we are on a journey of learning from all aspects. We are learning from health point of view. We are learning from non-violence point of view. We are learning from spiritual point of view, and we are also learning about environmental aspects of consumption of dairy. Also, unfortunately, because of the dairy, the beef is available.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's simultaneous products of dairy industry which has become more available. It is exported. India is one of the big country in the world exporting beef, but it's also going for local consumption because it's cheaply available.
Mm.
So even that is on the rise, and
Right.
therefore the diseases are also on the rise. But
Mm.
very big surprise that after all the arguments, only when you just give up animal products, healing from various lifestyle diseases is very comfortable journey. It takes
Mm.
time. I have to teach them all about dairy alternatives. All our traditional dishes, we convert them back into, you know, plant-based dairy products. We don't call it as dairy, we call it as drinks or beverages, and we
Mhm.
like curd, and we like, so we do all these things, and we try, and so now it's growing gradually, it is growing. And even just before any bigger Jain or such festivals come, suddenly there are videos, and there are a lot of messages that come up asking people, are you a true ahimsak? Are you practicing what your religion preaches? All these questions are asked, and it's good. It's kind of making people think. And each year we see that the more and more people are now joining from all these different aspects. So it will happen faster in India, as Dr. Rao said, because our foundation is that of non-violence. It's only a question, just one question to disturb, and then the journey will start.
Mm.
And as Dolly said, that it's not just the India, the land of Ahimsa, the whole planet, the whole earth will become the land of Ahimsa if India
That's
leads
right.
the way. And we will lead the way. We will. We have understood it.
Mm.
We have
Fan-
understood it. We will not
Fantastic.
take this time, and we will continue our journey,
Hmm.
and we continue to spread the message with the same word Ahimsa again and again, again and again.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Rupa. Very, very well said, very beautifully said. So, moving back to you, Dolly, I just wanted to ask you a question regarding spirituality and religion and culture. You know, it's such a fundamental part of Indian lifestyle. You know, religion and spirituality is a core part of life in India, and but dairy features so prominently in spiritual practices, in rituals, and you showed it very beautifully in the film. How are we able to convince our Indian friends and brothers and sisters and family members to I guess go against the grain, go against tradition? It might seem. Surely it seems an unsurmountable challenge to get people to make this change. What do you think?
Yes, Robbie, and this is an excellent question because it's so embedded in our culture. You know, milk is holy. Lord Krishna had it. It's tradition. We have to use it. And so when I went vegan overnight, my first activism was talking at a temple. And I spoke at a Jain temple. And, you know, I explained to them we can always use coconut water or coconut milk when we're bathing our gods. We can use coconut oil, all these things I was taught by my guru, my teacher, Dr. Shailesh Rao. And that temple made a lot of changes. So education, education, education is key. My purpose in life is to speak at Indian temples because I want them to take the pledge of being a pure Ahimsa temple and getting rid of all dairy products so we can actually align our values with our actions. This is my purpose. There would never be beef in any temple, any Indian temple all around the world. We would never have beef. Then how could we be having dairy? Beef and dairy are two sides of the same coin. And so, if we really want to love our gods, our traditions, we have to evolve. We can use simply water when we're bathing our gods, our deities. And in the cafeteria, we can eat all our delicious Indian foods just by replacing it by plant based products. It's just so simple. You know, I'm a Gujarati Indian born in a vegetarian family, and I make all my Gujarati food still today, but with compassion. And it's so simple. So, yes, because it's so embedded in our culture, it is going to take time, but I do feel like people are finding out, and the truth will always, you know, we have the truth on our side. So, India will be the most vegan friendly country in the world. This is what I'm manifesting.
It's a matter of time. Thank you, Dolly. Over back to you, Dr. Sailesh. Now, obviously, the Indian subcontinent is a huge place. And if we all know that dairy has such a massive impact on the environment. But I'd love to hear from you about what is the impact of dairy on the environment. We heard about it in the film, but you know, it's more kind of a big question of if India stopped farming and treating dairy cows in the way they do and dramatically reduced dairy consumption, what kind of environmental impact would that have?
It will have a huge impact on the land and how we use land right now, and that's where most of the cost of consuming animals comes from. The way we use land, we are currently literally destroying the forests and giving that land to our cows and our goats and our sheep to consume, and they consume anything that's growing on the ground. Pretty much, if goats finish, there is nothing left. You know, it becomes a desert. So I say we know that over the last 10,000 years, the planet has lost 3 trillion trees. So there used to be 6 trillion trees, and now there is half of that, about 3 trillion trees. And those trees and the soil that the trees live on actually store 3 times as much carbon dioxide as the atmosphere, even though we have cut half the trees on the planet. So imagine what we could do if we give that land back to nature and bring back the trees that we cut. We can literally reverse climate change, right? And at the same time, give land back to wild animals so that they can come back. Because right now we are killing off wild animals in order to raise these domestic animals like dairy cows and consume their dairy products and get sick. So it really doesn't make any sense from any perspective, you know. So this is why I say it's It's a sensible step that we are taking towards a vegan world and to rewilding the planet and bringing back the wild animals and therefore living in harmony with all of nature.
It's a
So this is the
beautiful vision.
climate healing. Yeah, this is the
It's a
climate
beautiful
healing.
vision. Sorry to speak over you. It's an absolutely beautiful vision. I have no doubt that humanity can live in symbiosis with this beautiful world and all the animals on it. Obviously, the film mentions statistics, and there's a lot of data that's mentioned and thrown around by people. Your personal kind of research has come under lots of scrutiny and criticism, and lots of people have. Well, all studies come under criticism, of course, but uniquely yours, because the number that you propose of greenhouse gases based on animal agriculture is quite high. Obviously, we don't have tons of time this evening, but would love to hear a little bit from you about your philosophy around the effects of animal agriculture and why you believe that the greenhouse gas emissions are much, much higher than we think in the mainstream, essentially.
Absolutely. Now, I did the analysis on climate science using my engineering hat. This is what I wear. As an engineer, you ask what would happen if you shut down the animal agriculture industry and give that land back to nature? How much will it impact the greenhouse gas emissions that humans are putting into the atmosphere? And my calculations show that it will be reduced by at least 87%, if not more. Okay. And that is based on data of how much animals are consuming today. So we know animals are eating, so much CO2 embedded in the food that they're eating. And so you can then calculate if the animals were not there and that CO2 was being left as vegetation, then how much will be stored on land and how much will be stored in the soil every year. And that calculation shows it's at least 87%. So it's a lower bound. It's an engineering lower bound, meaning as an engineer, I think I can guarantee that. And it's now up to us to actually go try it out and see how much we can tighten the lower bound. If it's greater than 100%, actually, it's good for us, right? It means that even though we are burning fossil fuels, our CO2 levels in the atmosphere will be coming down because we gave up animals. Okay. But that also gives us time to go and reduce our CO2 from fossil fuel emissions too, because ultimately we have to stop putting stuff into the atmosphere, the CO2, because even the forests that come back are not an infinite sink. After some point, they will stop sequestering CO2. And at that point, you have to reduce your CO2 from fossil fuel consumption. So I'm not saying this is going to eliminate the need for fossil fuel reduction. I'm just saying that eliminating animal agriculture is the first simplest step that we need to be taking. And it will immediately give us a huge dividend in terms of climate change.
Absolutely. Very well said. I think we can all agree on that for sure. And just to let the audience know, if you do want to ask any of our panel any questions, please do pop them in the question box below and we will get to them as soon as we can. I will ask a couple of more questions and then we'll come to your questions straight after. Thank you, Dr. Salesh. So now taking a zoom back into the world of veganism and culture, I'd love to sort of pass the question back over to you, Dolly, and ask about veganism as a philosophy. Obviously, veganism as a word is a very Western word. It's created by Donald Watson in the 1940s. What is the idea of veganism like in India? Are people open to this philosophy? Is it something that people are resistant to? What is the sort of mood when you speak to fellow Indians about the philosophy of veganism? Obviously, ahimsa is part of veganism. We can all agree on that. But this idea of not using any animal products, because obviously that also includes leather, that includes silk, it includes everything that comes from an animal. So what is it like in India when we talk about veganism?
Yes, Robbie, great question. As we traveled India this summer, people think vegan is this American philosophy. Why should Indian people in India be vegan? They say vegan, vegan. But actually, Dr. Rao has taught us that a long time ago, the rishis, our Muni rishis, they were actually vegan. They weren't even consuming milk. And India is predominantly, still today, a vegetarian country. So we just have to educate India that vegan is not just an American philosophy, it's a philosophy of the heart. We are all born with this compassion. And if they can just see that if we all together really live with this compassion, because, India is nothing but compassion, because the reverence of animals and love and the mother and Bhumi Devi, which is Mother Earth, they all just need to understand when we mean vegan, we mean love and we mean compassion
Mm.
and not to hurt any sentient being. So I think it's just education to the Indian people. We're not trying to pound down any, uh, philosophies that they become like this is an American philosophy. No, it's the world's philosophy. It's humanity that we do not steal milk of another being for our pleasure. And I think we just have to educate this word vegan more in the Indian society.
Ver-
Yeah.
Vernacular. Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, Dolly. We've got a great question that's come in from the very lovely Susan Hargreaves. And Susan says, were the people you met during the film surprised to hear about how cows were mistreated? So I thought I would just jump in with that question because I thought you'd be able to answer that, Dolly.
Well, all the people I interviewed, of course, knows what's going on. But yes, through meeting people, a lot of people don't know. I mean, I grew up that way. I didn't know that this is happening to cows. I had no idea. We had this pretty picture. Even when I would visit as a child and I would see cows on the street, I would think, wow, this is so cool. But until I become awoken and I go to India now, I'm like, wow, they're searching for plastic on the street because they're so hungry. Where are the males? Why is this so hidden? It's just uh, a lot of people just don't know. They don't want to know. And the ones that do know want to remain ignorant because they love the taste. That's what it comes down to. They love how it tastes. It's very addictive and they don't want to give it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. There's another question that's come in, which is from Shy Man, who says, "Why not impose laws to ban cruelty on animals? Dairy is a second thought.
That's
Can we
right.
can we change the laws?"
Absolutely. I mean, Miss Menka Gandhi in the film has changed a lot of laws. She has stopped the donkey slaughter. She's done so much, and she's still continuing to do that. So yes, I think India should have laws on protecting. Now, see, cows in India do have rights. You can't slaughter a cow in India. It might be happening illegally, but they do have rights. But buffaloes in India have no rights. They will be going straight to slaughter once they cannot produce milk anymore. And the male bull will be going to either the baby will be going to leather or being slaughtered, being exported. There are some rights for cows in India. There's rights for dogs in India, and absolutely, I think that all of us people in India should fight for this. Find out who our local mayors and politicians are. Write letters. We need to concentrate and work so hard on getting laws on all goats, buffaloes, and our cows.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Dolly. I think that's all we have time for now, and I really appreciate all of you coming on and talking about this wonderful film. Have you got any parting messages before I let you all go? Over to you, Dr. Sulesh. I'll let you go first.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this, Robbie, and thank you for premiering the Land of Ahimsa on YouTube channel. And I think it's the start of a huge revolution that we are creating. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you. Dr. Rupa?
Yeah, the most important part is that we are vegan. Everyone is vegan in their heart. We are all vegan only. It's just we want to remind and remember that we are both vegan already, loving, compassionate, connected, seeing the others as not others but as me, as there is no other. So when we have this kind of perception that we are one, what we do to them only returns back to us, then we will start walking on the path of non-violence or ahimsa.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Dr. Rupert. And last but not least, over to you, Dolly, a final word from you.
Yes. First, Robbie, Plant Based News, thank you so much for featuring this film. We are so grateful. I'm so grateful to Dr. Rao, Jerome Flynn, and Dr. Rupa Shah. Your words you just said brought me to tears. That was so beautiful. I'd like to say, Dr. Rao taught me in a nonviolent world, not only India, but the whole planet will be known as the land of Ahimsa, which is nonviolence to all beings. The most beautiful word ever written. So let's get back to our roots.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. I've been your host, Robbie Lockie, and this is Plant Based News. If you want to watch the film, please do check out our YouTube channel where it will be available for free. And it also has 13 different languages. Many of them are in languages for the Indian subcontinent. So please do check it out and share it with your friends and family. And if you do like it, please leave a comment. Thank you for joining us. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you next time.